Hello, James Bomar.
Home is Daniel.
This is Daniel Ott of the Ed Television Broadcast.
Man, I was listening to the show, before you let me on, man. You had me cracking up over here, man. I'm hoping to have a lot of fun on today's show.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was actually in a reduced mode because you don't want to get me going, man. And some of the folks know, but yeah, I can go on a tirade. In fact, were you watching the program or just listening?
I'm just listening. Well, actually,
okay.
No, I'm watching.
Okay, because
listening.
I do something called ranting points here. Let me pull that up for you if you've never seen the show. Now we won't do it tonight because we're already on the broadcast. But it looks like this here. No, it looks like this. And then I switch on over here. And then I do my ranting points here. See, and I start going at it. And that is just crazy crap going on when I land over here. Well, James, listen, welcome to the program. Appreciate you being on the show tonight. We're going to be talking about the resistance. And before we get going, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, I mean, I guess what can I really say? I believe that self is all, and I just want to really put people in the know about all this information and also application about just how expansive we really are. Me personally, this has been a life quest, and I just call it the EverQuest, or we even call it Astral Quest. It's just something that's been going on. I'm now really fully remembering what happened last time I was here in this part of the galaxy, and I just wanted to connect some things for people so that they can really understand what's going on in their reality, in their confusion for them, and then they can get on to the major part of what we're really here for. So I believe tonight is going to be a major part of that. I've been watching the energy and how it's moving through, and I want this show really to be, just have a lot of strength with it. But also, I like the way you started things and just allowing people to open up the happiness within themselves and be able to neutralize any kind of fear and things of that nature with still looking at the big picture. You're immortal, so here's how big of what you've got yourself into now. Smile for me, because that's what opens your crown chakra, not so much as being in there like expecting the whole Olympic ceremony to blow up in front of your face, and all of that. That's really where we're moving people out of.
Is there you mentioned, and that's a pretty big event, the games there, but is there a supernatural or spiritual meaning to all that?
For sure, there's a super ritual going on, but the rituals themselves are really repetitious, so the most that they can do is try to make it look different. But the reality also is, of course, with everyone thinking that there's something going on, it allows people to concentrate a large amount of just basically dark field energy, and they keep structures that collect this kind of energy. And that's really what they're doing with the energy, because it's used to travel into the past. People want like the cut through on, well, what's all this negativity about? Well, negative energy is what you use to travel into the past. Positive energy is what you use to travel in the future. And because they're always busy in the past trying to change things to manipulate our future, they need that dark field energy. So that's what's really going on. So just on the regular, they're always going to keep things going on to see if they can kind of pull the strings on humanity, or kind of play humanity like a guitar. And just get that essence and that energy out of them. I call it the secret, or secrete. It's just what's coming out of you when you're scared.
This negative energy. So, are you saying that it is a transient type of thing, that it needs to be renewed? It doesn't continue. It needs to be fed, so to speak.
Yeah, because it's an illusion anyway. So all illusions have to keep consistently being fed in order for them to kind of even exist for that moment, right? If you can picture it. So they can capture it in cubes, generally black cubes. It's just the geometry and what that's related to, which is really like a womb. But they can capture it, and then it becomes basically able to be harnessed, because what they built from what the extraterrestrials gave them was a device to go back into the past. But the trick is when they got the whole thing hooked up, you can just imagine maybe how sophisticated it looked. And then they were looking for where's the power supply? Everything that you bring, whatever type of device, has a power supply. It doesn't matter how much technology it really has to it. If it doesn't have any power, then it can't do anything. You see what I mean? So that's when they got the news flash that the negative energy of the people was going to need it in order to be able to power this device. So that's just the tip of the iceberg to what we can get into here tonight, and kind of pulling apart the mega structure and showing people what's really going on. We're in the know. This means that what we're telling you can research it everywhere. There's an as below, so above nature to everything, meaning that you'll find examples of it everywhere after you understand just the core knowledge. So that's what we, like I said, hope to do is, transmit somewhat of what I say is a tool or a guideline that people can start to use to really gain bearing. It's like a map to where you're at. So that way, people can start to stabilize themselves in this on this ship that we're on, because of course, a bunch of people flying through space on a large organic vehicle and inorganics on the vehicle, which is computers. This is a ship, so what's up?
Well, James. Let's go back a little bit now. Just your comments right there indicates, obviously, and I'm sure the folks watching and listening, because we're streaming high def video, but we're also streaming low bandwidth audio for those that are sort of cruising the net while they listen to the show. But how did you get to these sort of deep understandings? We'll go into your understandings, but were you called? Did somebody appear to you? Was it were you abducted and was it impregnated into you? Where did this come from?
Good question. Again, this has really been going on since as a child. I just have a very accelerated common sense. Let's say it like that. I have a tendency to remember a lot of things. So if there's inconsistencies, my mind kind of like has a radar that says, hey, there's some inconsistencies here. But how it really began is really through a spiritual path. My mother and the people that were around me were involved deeply in spirituality, first through Wahhab Islam, which is more of a stricter version of Islam. And then from there, we went into Christianity. But my mother, because she was always a serious person about spirituality, she took us to every single church as she was making her decision about who she really wanted to, I guess, serve as Lord. You understand the old program. So I saw a lot of things as I was going through Presbyterian, Pentecostal, Baptist, all these different churches. And of course, I'm picking up essence and experience in these situations. So I believe that this has been an ongoing thing. I've just been having a lot of communication ever since earlier in life about, what's right and what's left and what's straight. And I've been into a lot of experiences. So I wasn't just limited to first just having this foundation of being really spiritual. I then went into the world and was very successful in the world, but still had this eye open to everything, and was just, again, noticing the inconsistencies. And then I just start, like I said, cutting to the point, like, okay, what's up with me? Like, when I'm looking at everybody else, like, where am I going? Like, what's going to happen when I die? And these were questions that I had been asking myself still as a child. In fact, that was the only thing that I was afraid of as a child. When I first saw death, I asked the person, what happened? And they explained to me that it's dead. And I said, so where did it go? And they're like, only God knows. So then I went to God with the sincere question about, hey, where do people go when they die? But again, it took many, many years for this question to ever be answered. It wasn't like I got an answer straight up. But and it's not really like a straight up answer anyway. Of course, it's a lot more drawn out depending on who the individual is. But that's really my beginning, man. And it's still accelerating. That's the other thing. I'm not like a story like this is what happened and I'm coming to tell you about it. Like, it's stuff happening all the time. There's a lot of people in the unit. The resistance itself, if you Google just the resistance and Google, we're on the first page. That's hard to do. We did that organically. We've been here for 3 or 4 years. There's, of course, been a lot of kicking us down and, making sure that we're not known by other factions that can really get us out there. So, but that's been the only thing that's been keeping humanity from this magnificent information. And like I said, we haven't even got into it yet. So people have yet to prove that I can really do that for them in this conversation, is turn them on or activate them.
So do you look at it like sort of a matrix feel to it, where when you say activate, are you really pulling people out of the matrix?
Well, the matrix is itself, I mean, it comes from the word, the matrices. This word basically means womb. It means a place that's dark where things are cultivated. This is not like a new word, even though we have a new movie. So the matrix has always been a womb. It's a cube. So what happens is when you're in this matrix, you know, a lot of things are confusing, just like a child in the womb is very confused. And you continuously gestate through these matrices, and each time they're bigger and bigger, i.e. more experience, more, the numbers and the codes that are being used are more complex. And so you keep graduating through these matrices, or you actually also descend or disintegrate into matrices.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, you just let me know when to fire this thing off, man. I'm going to fire this space cannon Orgon generator.
Okay. Alrighty. We did have a question come in our live chat, and it said they want to know, did your mother ever get involved with witchcraft at all?
No, I mean, okay, first of all, let's talk about what witchcraft really is. I mean, first of all, what witchcraft is it's Wicca. Wicca means to bend. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the god of Wicca is a particular god. It's actually a horn god, a god of nature. And this kind of rolls us right into the program. I'm glad people actually asked that question because it gets us going. So just officially, no, my mother didn't deal with witchcraft because she was already in the mind of Wahhab Islam and the current Christianity, which is that's paganistic, that's evil, stay away from it. And thus the vault is closed on Pandora's box, but there's still an entire database of information that has not been examined by the individual. So that is the explanation. My mom didn't get into that. My mom made a unique connection because she was serious. I believe everyone can make this unique connection if they're serious. It doesn't really matter what name they're saying and who they think is God. If they get serious, something will happen and it will vividly manifest to them. Mm-hmm. So when you're in a serious situation, because, you know, of course, I have an expansive life, so I've been in situations where you really need to ask yourself real questions now. Life is at stake to a certain degree. So what kicks in then through your adrenals is in a totally different kind of person. That's where the superhuman is, activation through the adrenals. You're scared, or you're simulating fear, or you're worried, or you need to get out. All of that is, even what the CIA does, they know how to simulate those kind of things in their mind. Mm-hmm. And this activates this adrenal, which gives you a superpower. And then at that point, you're directing it. So either you're allowing someone to control you and then they're directing your energy, or you know how to direct your energy. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of to get right into this, so let's talk about the Wicca. So there is knowledge about this earth that is ancient. How this earth was formulated is a one-time information story, meaning that there's not a bunch of stories about how earth was formed. We would do ourselves the best by getting some type of structure that we can look at, so that if we were traveling through time, we would know what people were doing. And that is for us currency, mm-hmm. money. Okay, if we go anywhere throughout time, and this lasts especially 6,000 to 7,000 years, to find out what people are worshiping or what they think is God, just go to the money. So back in the day when the herders, where everyone was a herder, everyone was a farmer. Everyone tilled the earth. Like, this is why cattle became the currency. I'm going to fast forward through history where cattle became the currency, which is the recent segment that we're on. And there was a lot to do with, this is a lot to do with the bull. Okay. I'm explaining to people now what I call the as below explanation for it, like how this looks to you on earth. Mm-hmm. But I want to also explain to people by the end of the conversation how this goes on also in your body through your chakra centers. You're already the universe. You're actually a map of the universe. Okay. So what we're dealing with here is in the root chakra is the horn god. This symbol is an inverted pentagram. Mm-hmm. Now notice how, if you're trying to get to the bottom of things, I probably would go to, well, what are these elite really doing? They keep throwing up this symbol called the cornoodle. They seem to be in touch with some real power from Nazi forces and stuff like that. They seem to have all of these different things. So, and they're out in Bohemian Grove. There's owls. There's horn gods. I mean, mm-hmm. What is the big deal here? Yeah. So, like, instead of waving it off as all stupid, I just went in and started analyzing it, which I do everything. And I started to pull up an enormous amount of data and like a major level of understanding of why Earth was exactly the way it was, or the way it is. So we'll pause on the bull gods first for a minute to start and ask ourselves, in the land of our language, which is how we communicate, it's everything. Where does it really come from? Because this is what we're using to do everything with. So are we sure we understand not only where it came from, but also what it means? So the answer is, of course, for most people, no. With the language, they're just using it. They don't understand all 7,000 languages that were delivered onto this planet were all extraterrestrial. The only only languages that we've ever constructed on our own have been the languages that we gave to computers. Basic, Fortran, COBOL, etc. All the other languages, Arabic, Hebrew, all that, extraterrestrial languages. So how it comes out with English is that, or English as I call it, is that people only understand it from the level of how they're speaking it, but they don't understand where it came from and what it means. And so where we have to move to is we have to move to phonetics, which happens to be named by the Phoenicians, and their symbol is the phoenix, and they were also known as the Canaanites. So this means the Canaanites' language is what we're using now. And what was their god? The bull. The bull was what they know as Cain. Moloch means Cain, or king, or Khan, or Cohen, or priest. All these words were the same thing. So what we're actually dealing with here in our mega structure is that there is, for better lack of words, a minotaur in the middle of the maze. Mm-hmm. Now notice how many Ma words you'll see that begin with Ma. We got matrix, now we got maze, we got man, we got male, we got masculine. Now the interesting part about this is that if I'm talking about a woman, which is Ma is supposed to be the opposite of the male sex, why am I have so many female words to describe this person? This is why when people start to examine the language, they'll get the truth to everything. Because what happens is that you can't just go to a race of people anywhere and say, hey, you guys are going to use this language now, and you're going to forget your old one. That never happens. What happens is they say, here's what the words mean now. And then people say, yeah, okay, this is what the word or the vibration or the sound means. And so thus they guide the energy. So if I show you a bull and you're under certain levels of programming, you may think of the devil, the horn god, and evil. But if you have no programming, when you see the bull, you just say, oh, that the forces of nature. Because how this worked out is the moon, now you see that crescent moon, mm-hmm. The symbol of also horns, because now there's an extraterrestrial component. This is where the extraterrestrial component begins. That somehow the ancients keep saying on the moon, there's something on the moon. And all of this spirituality that you're seeing, all of these stars and these pentagrams and these crescent moons and these symbols that these people are using, start with the moon. This is kind of what the ancients are saying with the symbolism. So when you go deep into it, you find out that, first of all, any religion that uses a moon, maybe the adherents don't know what's going on, but the people on top, they know what's going on. The angel Gabriel, which is the angel of the moon, delivered all of these religions according to their books. Mm-hmm. In Islam, the angel Jibril comes to Muhammad and gives him the inspiration to write the Quran. In Christianity, the angel Jibril comes and tells Mary, basically, I'm sure that was where the Immaculate Conception took place, gives Mary the moon child, basically, and then tells her, hey, you're about to bring forth this child, according to their books. Okay. So now what we're dealing with here is that we have to conquer this bull. This is why in Texas, which they know all about, their currency for a long time was still cattle herding. Mm-hmm. That in W. Bush the W is a horn, an M is a horn.
There you go. Now, I always suspected there was something up there.
There's something up there, of course. It's the lone star, meaning the only pentagram. Now, let me explain to you the origins of the pentagram, because according to how they teach us in school, some lady developed a pentagram because we made a 4-pointed star, and then she made a 5-pointed one and said it looks better. This is what they tell us in school of how we got pentagram, how the design of the pentagram got on our flag. Why such a big lie? It's because the pentagram was known as a Brak, who's also Barak. It's the 5-pointed star was the symbol of the Sumerians. It was known as the plow sign. meaning that they were coming to domesticate. The command that was given to them from Orion was to come here and get this place prepared for the gold. That was the original translation. The gold is the souls. So what we have here is, how do you think we got to this point in the world now? Like, I'm sitting in a house, I have a computer, I have all sorts of stuff hanging around. How did we get to this point? Oh, domestication. None of the animalistic energies, or what they call elementals, were tame here. The bull was not tame, and the female had horns too. Bovid is the name, or uru. Mm-hmm. The female had horns too. So you can imagine, if a female cow also has horns, it's probably going to be even more dangerous than the male cow if she's in heat.
Yeah.
So,
or that time of the month.
Right out of her. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? So yeah. What we're also dealing with is that where our spirits are inside of composite bodies that have been genetically structured with all the flora and fauna and the animals that are based on this planet. But that's just our physical body. Our souls have an entirely different nature. But for people to understand, why do you think people are born with tails? People are born still with tails. People are born, even I saw a person even born with a horn. This is because this is what was bred out. Now notice, when you look in Egypt, you get these beings known as Neteru. But the whole thing of the Neteru is that you see basically a human body with an animal face. So what is this saying? Oh, it's genetic modification. This is why it was called the arc. Now notice again, the moon, when it gets in that curve, is called the arc too. We're going to keep connecting this. So this ark to them, remember how they told Noah to build the ark? Okay, people think that it was like a regular boat. No, what this was about is that they knew impending disaster was going to come to the planet. They caused the impending disaster by bringing their planet-sized ship into this system. Now, first, this system was like a hymen, for better lack of words. It was a virgin system.
Whoa. Mm-hmm.
With the bull, who's Jupiter, into the system. This basically caused the astronomy of the system to go asunder. Like, all of the clock came out of place. The planets themselves begin to basically go to war, is how they termed it, because the only planets that were going to survive after this was the ones that could take the impacts. Now, notice Saturn. Saturn is also what the hat means. With the hat with the brim on it, that's why the Jews wear it, because it's the symbol of. Mm-hmm. That's why. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me slow you down a little bit there and get a couple questions in for you. Are you there?
Yeah. I'm here.
Okay. All right. It says this is from Peter in Australia. He says you once said that you can communicate with the organic and inorganic life forms. Can you explain that?
Yeah, what happens is with the body is, of course, so let's fast forward here. Now, the body is the apex. It's the apex of the creation. Like, what were they trying to do? Now, you see how if you can take a plate of glasses and walk it all the way upstairs without breaking it. Now, if you try to take an animal and try to do that with it, you better make sure you strap the glasses down. It's not agile like that. It doesn't know how to reason. It doesn't know how to do any of that.
All right.
What was needed was an apex species. That's why they said, let us make it in our own image. This is what I call the gift and the curse, because you can't also inherit these beings as problems. Mm-hmm. So what happened was this apex being was created like a mini god, basically. They call it demigod. So that way the system itself could expand into an entirely different structure. Because these beings, too, were limited. That's why the ancient beings are sometimes confused for being all-knowing. Nothing is all-knowing, because things are continuously being created. That's the whole pursuit. That's what keeps us actually all alive, is the pursuit of that. So what I'm saying here is that when you start to really also connect this, Daniel, it does something to your energy that allows you, it frees up your chakra centers. Mm-hmm. And to guys' question is, once that energy starts to move in, you become super sentient, in the sense that your higher chakras are responsible for picking up etheric signals, like person's thoughts. Of course, when a person thinks, a signal goes out, but most people can't pick it up because they're moving from root chakra and below.
Now, you talk about telepathy there?
Are those? But in the crown chakra, if you have your energy in those centers, you pick up energy, and you also pick up communication just from the matrix, because the matrix itself does have a hive mind or astral database, for better lack of words, that can be tapped into by the individual that is on it. And you can look through the timeline because it's a circle. So you can see everything from a non-linear level. And this is also what Dr. Brown was talking about. Your mind is phase locked because, like he was saying, one of the most important things that he said was, if you're at a river, let's say a lion is drinking there today, but the day before a cow was drinking there, and the day after a gazelle was drinking there, what your mind has to do is determine which one is the most important to you, and the one that's most important to you is the present, and so thus it locks on the present.
You're talking about my last week's guest, Dr. Courtney Brown?
Exactly. If you're trained properly, you can see all that's there, and then you can tune in. You can choose which one you want to tune into. Now, this is third eye. Like exactly what the third eye does. The third eye is basically a cornucopic field that meshes directly over the matrix that allows you to see everything that's there.
Well, let me ask some, James. Do you believe that there are extraterrestrial entities?
To me, it's intraterrestrial. There's more intraterrestrial energies than extraterrestrial energies.
But I'm not talking about energies. I mean a physical being.
In the center of the earth, yes. They don't no beings that have physical bodies that reaches.
Because didn't you say you spoke of briefly in a sentence about crafts coming down? But my question is, do these beings have the same chakras? Do they have the same centers that the basic human does?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, they are the humans. That's what the whole big revelation is going to be to everyone, is that all is self. Like, all these beings are us. They're just what we're unpacking into 3D. It's what they call this is the arrivals. This is your shipment or cargo. They say the ships are coming. What this is about in 3D, only that you see here is what people unpack from inside of them. Like when a person creates a song, that's now their song. It comes into 3D. But what's inside of us is limitless. So what we're at the brink of, and actually crossing into it, is people are starting to unpack many parts of themselves. And unfortunately, the society is choosing to first unpack, well, unfortunately for many people, I'll just say that, they're choosing to first unpack the primordial part of themselves. And this is where you get all the stories of serpents, gods.
Well, I want to know, when the unpacking begins, is there a trigger moment, a defining moment when that unpacking begins?
Okay, now here's the thing about these particular timelines that we think that are the ascension timelines. Okay, the ascension is any time you're actually ready. That was one of the major secrets. The second thing is that how this unpacking takes place is that if you want to know what's going on in the cabal, what are they doing? Is that now they have this language that was given to them, and like I said, it's an extra. We'll use the term because it's more fascinating. It's an extraterrestrial language, and when you move it in certain ways, it creates something. So with Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, when you drop it all down on itself, it makes the symbol that we call a Star of David. This means that if you drop all the letters on top of each other, it makes a Star of David. So this means the language itself is actually a cube or a matrix. It can create. And that's what I said later, the code to the computers, or the knowledge of how to make a computer, is in the Hebrew language. You damn right it is. Because it's basically the mathematics behind how to create a world. The poignant answer then, when does the unpacking begin? The unpacking had already began with the individuals. When they found this out, they started to tap into primordial parts of themselves.
So is it a specific time, or is it a gradual process?
Like I said, it's already happening. This is already happening. This is what they're doing.
Is this already happening? Okay, so we're talking about a certain individual who begins the unpacking. You said before he begins unpacking, it's already being unpacked.
Okay, you're right. Let me talk about it in a separate standpoint. Yes, with certain an individual who has not unpacked it yet, right, is already unpacking just small parts. This is the knowledge of self. Like, who am I? Where am I? What am I here for? This starts the unpacking process. Now, it looks to me, if I just to tell you how I can feel these energies, it looks to me that somehow we're getting closer to something. The energy is rising higher and higher. Every month I feel more and more energy. So it's obviously something that we're getting closer to. You see what I mean? Like something that we're now closer to than ever. So it's possible that these timelines, like 2012, just by default are pulling us closer to fuller awakening because everyone believes this is the full awakening time. And that can 100% work. But when I'm with the unpacking, especially for individuals such as yourself, many of the individuals on the line, they've started to do it already. You see what I mean? And then now this conversation adds more to it because everything, like I said, is also timed perfectly in the sense that, to me, it's like right now. That's why when I generally get in, like you said earlier, we want to put as many people into the knowledge as possible, as fast as possible, so they can get into the next thing. This is a lot more entertaining than most people think. But when the confusion ensues, that's what becomes a problem.
Alrighty. All right. Well, let me ask you something. Once a person begins to unpack this, and does their DNA change? Does their physical presence change? Is it only a thought change of how they perceive reality?
Okay, let's get into that. It sounds like you want to know about the unpack shipments. I like you, Daniel, because Daniel is really the DNA. If you didn't notice, Dan is DNA.
Okay, I'm liking that. Sounds some kind of special thing to that, so I'm good with that.
Individual. Again, I've pulled these words apart several times, and it was because one particular tribe was responsible for altering the DNA, and that's the tribe of Dan, but we'll get into that like on another episode. So here's when a person starts to awaken themselves, okay, like where the energy generally is on most individuals. Let's start this on how the body is set up like the universe. And again, I'm not revealing anything new, by the way. This was in the books that they burned in the 20,000-year-old annuals, etc., the Puranas, Vedas, all that stuff. Okay, so how this is laid out is that your body is the universe. So, but in the lower regions, i.e. the netherworld, which is everything below your waist.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, when you said netherworld, I thought, yeah, okay, no, man, we're not going down there. But anyway, go ahead.
That's always the thought. I'm telling you, man, you hit it right on the nail, Daniel, because that is always the thought. The moment that you start telling people or saying anything about going down into the lower regions, no one wants to go. But unfortunately, the deeper part, like if we went through all of the higher planes and all the mid planes and we still didn't find the truth, where do you think the truth really lies? In the lower plane? Now,
in the nether hole?
Lower planes all the time and don't have any problems. They cannot be touched. This means that now there's no restrictions for you. There's no limitations for you. There's no zone checking, no customs. So in your lower area, corresponds to the serpent and the animal energies. The feet themselves are known as the serpent. Then when you get all the way back to the top of the waist, it goes to the bird. And everything in between there, as far as the animals are concerned, are encased within the feet. Mm-hmm. What rules over them is that area that you see as your sexual organ area, which is known as the root chakra, what they call the Muladhara chakra. This chakra is why, because it's hot. Mm-hmm. It generates basically the heat of our body. Okay. This is why they used to say hell is hot, because this chakra, which is also Mars, that's the planet that corresponds to it, is basically the heating component. And so how I'm trying to break this down to everyone to let them understand is that all of how you were created are within these centers of the body. It functions like a wheel inside of the body. This is what they call the chakra. And these things generally on most people are locked in the upside down position. When a person becomes enlightened or starts to work with enlightenment or unpacking in this sense, these things start to move. Then what it causes is you to come into realization of everything that is here. It's not basically something that can be explained because it's like, I got to experience that. You could tell me all about how it's supposed to cross the universe in the astral body, but I need to experience that now. So what we have is we have the formulas that were given to us as human beings to be able to activate our body and basically enjoy our experience here in the universe and beyond. So it's like this was locked down. That's why what Daniel was saying, or not Daniel, but what Mr. Brown was saying was right. This planet became known as the planned net. Notice the Neteru it has net in it. So what is this about nets? And then of course there's the fish, which Jesus is shown with the fish. They're fishers of men. So what is this about fishes and nets? And it's the knowledge that at a certain point, a certain group of beings put a net over the planet. So when we went to our gestation process, like we had basically gone into our natural ascension process, we basically hit the net and then went back down again. You see, it's basically like these beings that are here on Earth would have already evolved into what they were supposed to be anyway. But someone put a break or a kink in the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, when you talk about the chakras, is that something that somebody else who has a higher frequency or been unpacked, so to speak, in say a sort of a negative way, can they project against somebody else's or manipulate somebody else's chakra? Are they ever given that kind of power?
Yes, they can. In fact, when you stand next to a person, if you could see it on the etheric level, what you see is by the main chakra that you're using, there's something of like a tentacle or adapter that goes from you into that person and it plugs in. So what they're using now, and this gets us into MK Ultra and everything of that nature, is these individuals who have been trained to use their facilities, because real power is Kundalini. That's the big wake up for a lot of people that know about that whole lore. But what it shows is that they started getting these individuals who had Kundalini and had chakras open and using them to control because they were organics. You see, it's one thing to try to have something like HARP, which is a computer, control people, or it's just using inorganic frequencies. The carrier doesn't do enough. But the organic person can be used to tap into the organic minds of everyone. And this kind of gets you into that movie with who's that, Tom Cruise in Minority Report, where it's precogs, meaning individuals can see the past and the future, do all of the controlling of the reality.
Here's another question for you from the live chat. It says, can you tell us about when 60 million years of info was transferred to your mind when you interacted with ultraviolet lights?
Yes. Yes. In the last process of my awakening, I had once again went to sleep, and I was meaning in consciousness, I was asleep again, and I was working on a project. Because I remember, I'm coming from a life where I've been very affluent. I'm very intelligent still. I used to be a computer engineer, so I dealt with a lot of different kinds of fields. And I was doing a project with ultraviolet light where I had to keep testing to see if the ultraviolet light was taking onto the card properly. And in that moment, after 100 times doing this, I guess I had like maybe 100, 200 samples, I sat down for a break. And all of a sudden, the wheels started turning, literally. I started to see that I was in a circle or a cycle. And I started to see that probably last year I felt the exact same way and I was doing the same thing. And the only thing that kind of gave me this, I call it 5 minutes of deja vu, is I was also looking up at the corner of the wall when this happened. And all corners of the wall look pretty much the same no matter where you are. So I had this boom happen. And then I started hearing, I guess what I know now is the oversoul, meaning that it's basically within your mind that's always telling you what to do right, like what to do that is correct, whether you want to listen to it or not. But this time it was revealing an even more expanded version of the information. This is yourself. Like even when you look back at yourself as a child, if I say, Daniel, do you remember yourself as a child? When you're looking back, do you not know you're non-linear at that point? And then you feel as a child right then that someone is looking at you. You don't know who's looking at you, it's you looking at you. This is what we knew already, is what I'm trying to explain to people. Like this knowledge that I'm talking about, we created this entire thing to do that. This was
okay. Let me ask you something, James. You said earlier that if negativity gets you into the past. Have you ever done anything negative and went into the past?
I think that our body is configured as a negative vehicle most of the time, unless we choose to change it into the other polarity. So for everyone, when they go to sleep and they see themselves doing stuff that they normally wouldn't do, they did it just then. I've done it. I've had dreams where I've done things in the dreams I wouldn't do.
Okay, so then in the dream, do you go into the past, or do you go into the past when you wake up and remember the dream?
Well, I don't even go into the past, man. The past is the past. I solved the past. That's really like, it's like once you kind of close the book, it's like, okay, that's solved. Now I'm into creating. It's another direction. Remember, when most people are still dealing with the past, this is something that we have to do, but you're turned backwards, and that was called the blind God. Remember, God is really man in woman.
Well, in the dream sequence, when you go into a negative dream and do things that are illegal or immoral or whatever the negativity happens to be, who is the producer of that movie?
I believe personally, from what I've been studying, is I believe that is what they're doing with all of these devices, such as why they made the Mac aluminum completely, why they make the TVs, the flat screen, just like a black mirror, and it can be things can be projected to it through it.
So dreams are being projected and tailored to each individual?
I think just like what they call 1080p, it's enough pixels to mesh over everything. And
who is sending these projections into our mind?
I believe that these controllers that came from Nazi Germany, that were dealing with the knowledge that was taken from the Green Gloves in Tibet, that have bought themselves into the United States under the jet propulsion and took over our military.
Is every person have their own frequency as far as these projections? Because I would assume that most people have negative dreams at some point. So is this a scattergun approach, and we just our brains are picking it up? And does that mean that somebody else is having the exact same dream?
Well, if they control that chakra, then if you arrive in that chakra, generally there's a certain level of control that they have over your dream. So this is why it's not good to dream from the lower chakra areas. It's like, so basically all day in our society, of course, our energy is pulled down. We got gravity alone to pull.
I call that the Elton John area. But listen, what I'm saying is, there's 50 people in my block at night. Are 50 people being I wanted to use the word penetrated, but the way the conversation is going, I can't use that. But are they projecting to 50 people? Is everybody getting projected on?
It's almost like a chain reaction, Daniel, is what you're dealing with, where one person next door is projecting onto the other person. That's the whole secret of orgone energy, is that like if a person is like a very negative field, it's like they're like negative orgone sitting right there in the house. And they're radiating their field, and their field can be wide enough to also be rubbing into your house. Vice versa, an individual that has a very massive positive field is rubbing into everyone all over the block.
Okay. Are there entities that are patrolling neighborhoods that are seeking certain people out to project these dreams?
I believe that it's a lot more. I don't think they're roaming neighborhoods and things like that. I don't think they're using physicality to do this. Like, I don't believe they're using physicality. Like, the astral plane appears to, it looks like to me, again, that they're wanting to exercise more control over the dream world than they do over the physical world. And I remember there's another state of dreaming known as lucid dreaming, where you can control your dream. It's not a,
So do you sleep with orgone around your bed?
Not anymore. I used to.
Okay. Did it work? Did it protect you?
I had one interaction with orgone, and it was a small piece of orgone, and it was about the shape of a medallion. Early in my spiritual experience, I had went to sleep with it on my chest. I did experience it pulling negative energy out of me, and then I actually got sick off of it. Like 2 days later, I didn't throw it away, and I grabbed it, and I literally could feel my energy being pulled down from it, and I threw it away. And that's why I figured out that orgone energy, you can't get these orgone generators, and then if they accumulate all of this energy, they then have to be buried, because they basically absorbed all the contamination that they could, like bacon. And then after that, they're highly toxic. So some people like to keep them around for a long time because it does something, and also they like to have it there. But orgone, you can't really, that's what that's for. But yeah, I've had interaction with orgone, and it does work. But you have to know how it really works.
All right, here's it says, not a question, but from New Mexico. It says, you refer to a six-pointed star, which is witchcraft. It is one of the most potent symbols among witches and conjuring up demonic spirits. Is there any good purpose to a pentagram?
Well, first of all, that's not what I said. I don't even speak that way, so I know that they're not talking about me. But first, let's get what the six-pointed star is. Okay, it's two triangles. Okay? So two triangles coming together. So what are these two triangles? They're the opposite poles, i.e. fire and water, good, bad, etc. And when these two come together, all of the chaos, based duality, because it's a symbol of duality that happens, why these two triangles are forcing themselves into each other, that's why it's called it's a six or sex pointed star. It's what they call the sexagram. So it's the symbol of when these two opposing forces come together to generate what's known as the seventh. This is then the point in the middle that's made. So people, in essence, are a product. It's basically a product of the two opposing forces coming together and then making babies. This is how the universe solves all of its disease problems and things. It just mates the two together, and then the baby comes out immune to it. Because the previous predecessors have to basically get a heart and see, oh, those are my own children. And this is what happened also with the Nephilim. If you didn't notice in their story, it says once they started creating children, they loved the children. And then they wanted to defend.
Isn't the pentagram 5 points, though?
Pentagram is 5 points. It's 72 degrees on the angle times 5, which
Didn't you say 6?
degrees.
I thought you said 6. All right, here's a question from Janet in Indiana. She says, you referred earlier to a reference of the Bohemian Grove. Is that sinister, and is it evil and part of the Illuminati?
Yes, what's happening is there's two forces. There's pro-life and pro-death. Now, the pro-death force is Lilith. She's the mother of abortions. Her symbol is the owl.
Okay.
Because remember, there's still a horn god involved. So in essence, it's when you see the symbolism that they're using to worship it, what you see is basically a female with horns. And this is the component. And they say this is also why America has so many abortions, is because in the paperwork with the pact and the binding and the oath of the ritual, they've written that those babies that are aborted are going to that particular field.
Okay. All right. We have this question from the live chat this time. It says, which celestial body impregnated Mother Earth, and are there other planets as us?
Mother Earth is a womb. When you think of a woman, sometimes you just think of the woman walking down the street, but then when you think of Earth as a female, you kind of associate the two, but that is incorrect. Earth as a womb can take on many hosts, like there's praying mantis here, and there's us. So that's pretty much the entire spectrum right there. So there are other life forms on other frequencies, and if you get off of the elevator on their frequency, you will experience them in physicality.
So is it possible that the Earth got raped?
I believe that it's friction is the correct term. Like the friction, they say that how is fire generated? By either someone strikes a rock with another rock, or they rub two pieces of wood together, or they put two opposing chemicals together and there's an explosion. Then this gives you the nature of fire, which they say father. So there is just like when a man, is on top of a woman, I'm telling you, all this stuff is still sexual. Earth, the commandment in this book was be fruitful and multiply. If you don't think that that's what we're doing here, then I guess your eyes are not open.
Well,
So
hopefully the Packers aren't multiplying. All right, we got a question here. Then let me get back up here. It says, this is a simple question. Not that we're ending the broadcast, because it almost seems like an end of the broadcast question, but what is a simple message that you would like to convey to the world?
a simple message is that get activated. It's like there's no grand finale. Everyone's trying to wait on the end. This is going and keep going on. Get some control over it.
All right, let's. I have a call coming in. Let's see if this call is coming in for you. Hello, you're on the edge. All right. All right, Sevan, you still there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, evidently the caller is not hearing him. All right, continue on then.
Simple as that. Like, there's a lot of data behind this, and we have all the data. But still, what it ends up boiling down to is the person can go into the brute force method of cleaning themselves out. We've already unlocked the herbs that actually do that. The vibratory frequency of the body changes. You're very it's like you have more fields that you can tap into, thus you can get way more information, and then you get all the knowledge about what you're supposed to be doing. Then you synchronize yourself with the universe, and then it's it's nothing but continuous energy from there. Like, remember, all of this is still going to boil down to energy.
All right. Here's another question for you. This is from the live chat. Anonymous. Is the Bible the Word of God?
The bull god. Look, it's by bull, meaning two bulls. That's Enki and Enlil. All the Sumerians were horn gods. Now, also notice how you have Cain and Abel. Now, the papal bull, who's the Pope, he's the one who issues out the canon or the decree as a bull or an edict to run through the land, because no one can stop the bull when he's coming through the land, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why also, again, they tapped into this energy of nature, because they wanted to know how to use the brute force energy of nature and harness it. This is the same thing with Kundalini. You're learning how to use the brute force nature within your body and harness it to your benefit. This is why I'm saying on multiple levels the same thing is going on. You just have this macroscope thing to be able to see it on a high level and see it on a low level.
If James, if most of the planet became activated, what would we see different? Would we still have to go to Walmart and deal with crashing prices and gas prices, and would we still have Obama as president? What would we see? What would we see?
There would be no more physical plane. If everyone on this planet activated, because the energy that's associated with this activation, what you start to do is it would be basically like going up, and all of the things that were dense, that were too heavy to make it into that, wouldn't be there anymore. I hope that makes enough sense for everyone. It's like everything that's too heavy has a lot of weight. That's why I say, man, you got to wait. You can't go. You have, if anything that has a lot of weight won't rise into these higher frequencies.
So are you saying that the entire planet, all the people on it, will begin to rise from their terrestrial moorings and float out in space?
Well, actually, it wouldn't be like going out into space. It would be like inner space, which is where we all are. You see what I mean? Like, there's a whole outer thing that's going on in 3D, and this is really, of course, the beginning of our trouble.
I was looking forward to going floating away. Okay, here's another question for you in the live chat. In your opinion, who was the greatest spiritual teacher?
I don't even think I can answer that question. I mean, because when I think of that, to tell you the truth, to just maybe allow the person to know what my answer could have possibly be. Mantra, which means that there's these words that we're using and equal many of these higher energies. So in essence, I can't even identify it like a person to what I feel like is what's really helping us. What I think is happening here is that this is God's toys, for better lack of words, meaning that this dimension that we're on and these bodies and all this stuff, this was what the gods were using. And then now we're like these spirits, which are their children, basically, and we're in them now using it too, and gaining the experience so that we can eventually come out of these bodies and then understand how to govern our energy. Because what the body really is a governor. When you get into it, you can't use your abilities. That's how you end up forgetting about your abilities. This is why the pentagram is such a serious symbol.
Who gives you guidance spiritually? Who gives you guidance spiritually?
I believe everyone now. Like, what's happening with the resistance is that we all seem to be feeling and connecting with the same connection. It's like everyone right now is asking the major question, like, what's up? Like, I'm on Groundhog's Day. Know the same thing's going on every day, and I'm just not going to let it go like this. That's really where the connection is. It's
I don't know, man. If Groundhog comes out to see a shadow, I'm going to play whack-a-mole and knock him back in there. But your website there, and I've got had various things from your website in our background, but it's called the Resistance. Who is resisting what?
Well, first of all, the resistance is in a state of immunity. Like, obviously, if you lay on, okay, the nature of Earth, this is to let you know there's two sides to this whole thing anyway. If you lay outside on the ground and you just play dead. After about 2 or 3 days, you'll notice certain things will start to eat you. If you keep staying there, eventually something will grow over you or run over you. This means that the body has a natural resistance. People need to stop being a little silly about them not defending themselves, basically. Put up your defense. And because this is also gives you the responsibility, it gives you grounding. So what this is about is that the resistance gives the individual all the information, and a lot of this has been data so far, but we also have physical application, all the information that is necessary to repair the body and to get a person immune again, because they got a virus on them. Like, as you can tell that, you know, anytime you forget, that's virus.
Are you going to live forever, James?
We all will. It's whether we'll be conscious of it or not. This is also where we direct the focal point of our pursuit is we want to be conscious of these lives that we're going through, or else for me to even talk to you right now and the rest of these people, and for me to even experience anything in the world is meaningless if I'm going to forget it all. So what I'm doing here is creating a path so that people can leave Earth with what they learned here rather than getting wiped again, so that every time they keep coming into a planet, they forget that they were here before.
Okay, you said a planet. You mean this planet, or do people go to other planets?
Do go to other planets.
So are you saying that people have past lives?
Yes, they do.
And how many lives have you had?
I'm not sure.
Do you remember, do you have any residual memory of any life?
It's funny that you would ask that question, because like some people have these flashbacks of being here on Earth and things like that, but I never have that. What I've had is I had a situation happen when I was younger. I think I was about 13 or 14. And I was in this dream, but it definitely wasn't like a dream. Like, you could feel everything that was going on in there. And I was in this car speeding down the freeway, but everything was futuristic. And when I came close to the city, I felt this feeling in my heart, and then I watched the city explode. And then I woke up here. And when I tap back into that, I believe there may be a storyline in the biorhythm, let's just say it like that, that what took place here probably could have destroyed my planet on a parallel. I think in a sense that when I come into all of this information, I also started forgiving a lot of people, because I started realizing that just from the language alone, the code, if you don't understand the language that's in your mind, it's like a wheel or a disc. If you don't understand it, then your disc is broke. So this becomes like the Tron, where everything is on the disc, and you don't know what your disc means. Now notice how the English language is 26 letters. How many weeks are in a year? 52. 26 plus 26 is 52. It's the numbers are like that to show you what a circle is, an anu, as they call it.
What does 666 mean?
It's a carbon-based molecule. It's 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. That's the number of the beast, and the beast is man. That's what it says in the book.
The beast is man, but so this is it would have to be a man who's not been unpacked.
No, it's the physical. See, to them, beast like
or he's been packed many times by Liberace. I don't know which one.
The fear-based thing. When I say beast, then the person, oh my goodness, the beast. But in reality, back in the day, if I said beast again, if you were a cattle herder and the word that was used for beast, we would be like the cow, and nobody would be acting like they were
with
scared.
Or without horns. So I think. But now, what about the owl? You mentioned that earlier, and of course that's related to the Bohemian Grove, and of course on the dollar bill there's a little bitty owl sitting up there on the one, which has never been explained. But so is the owl? Is that sort of a creature maybe that was never part of the earth, and it was brought in, and that's why it is worshipped and it's used in so many nefarious occasions?
They call it the artificial womb.
The owl. Wait a minute. They call the owl the artificial womb?
Artificial womb, because the owl was, of course, a genetic modification. It contains a sonar of the dolphin. It has different things. Of course, it's a night creature, and this is also have these images.
His head spins around like poltergeist too.
In Samaria, they didn't only depict the gods as a horn god. They had these other ones that look like owl gods.
Right.
Does start in with the pentagram. I do have the pictures here from the Louvre.
So how do we know it's not the owl sitting out of somebody's head that's projecting our dreams into us?
Like Dr. Brown said, it's what frequency you're on. If you're on that frequency where they can do that to you, then then it happens. This is why a lot of
Do you
people
go to that frequency willingly, or is your frequency modified to allow, like a door opener?
Say that again?
Is your frequency modified? I mean, does somebody willingly tune in, or does it just happen naturally?
Well, first of all, you still have to realize that this stuff that we're talking about is highly under control. First of all, there's no random species tapping into humanity and all of that. So let's get that very clear.
And then I want to know who's in control.
Well, that's good. Now we're going to get to it. Now, if someone is sending out transmissions on the planet Earth, they have to have authorization from these Melchizedeks, which is the Church of Scientology. Now, remember how Dr. Brown was saying that the planet Maldek blew up? Maldek was Melchizedek. Mm-hmm. He's the priest. Now, notice how Abraham, according to the Bible, now Abraham means father, Ra, from the tribe of Ham. Ab means father, Ra, of course, Ra, from the tribe of Ham, because the Egyptians are also known as the tribe of Ham. Mm-hmm. They erected this priesthood, because this is now where we get into now the meat of this. Like, well, I guess they're literally the meat of this. Like, who's controlling this thing, and what are they doing? Now, when you look into the deeper books, you find that they have come in possession of a word that gives them the ability to charge up their system. They came into possession of one word first. Now there is a pursuit of words, and this is why in the Old Testament you find that they won't give out the name to who the Messiah is going to be. They say he's going to come, and then he's going to have the name, and it doesn't say what the name is. If you read the Bible several times, you may find these different passages in there, but you find that it's all now about the words, because words create worlds. They're actually the same word. All you got to do is add an L. L means God in Hebrew, but we won't get into that now, of how English is actually Hebrew and parts of other languages.
And you add O, becomes wood. Hey, by the way, let me get one of these questions in, because there's a bunch of them coming in. It says, could you explain the 80% negative energy people versus the 20% positive energy people equation on the Earth right now? Is that a number that you subscribe to?
Yeah, that's something that I was talking about on a diagram, which is about how basically people are overall negative, from the sense that they're always, when we were just talking about the energy poles, like let's just do an energy test. So what happens to most people is that they find themselves upset or angry pretty much 80% of the day, mm-hmm. and 80% of their time. And only time that they're happy is like 20%, and this is when they get something. This is when, like, someone's giving them something, or they mm-hmm. get their check, or they buy something. Right. And the reason why that's so short is because once they get whatever they got, then what ensues is complaining about it, mm-hmm. which is more negative energy. Mm-hmm. So I was just asking people in the diagram to perceive also the reason why we are so subject to the lords, which means to be lowered or brought down. These beings are brought down from on high to rule here. Mm-hmm. What subject to them is being on the same level as them. This was known as the black part of the ziggurat, the bottom or the mass. And so if they can convince people, notice through their media, MK Ultra and all this stuff, if they can convince people to be the mass, keep doing all the negative stuff, this means that they can erect, because they do know how to construct these worlds, their on the top of everyone they're convincing to be the foundation or the negative pillar. So you can see that it becomes legal if the person, or on a universal law, if the person accepts this and allows this to go on. Once you know about this, it generally already starts a chain reaction to where you start disavowing. Now, notice that in the United States, we put our right hand over our heart. We say, I pledge mm-hmm. allegiance. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I can show you a deep grimoire, which is basically when rituals are done, and that's the first line of it. Because when you do that, when you put your right hand over your heart and you pledge allegiance to 50 or 51 pentagrams, you would need to know what those pentagrams really mean. And if you just think, again, like they're a design that was created by a lady who thought the four-pointed star was...
But are you saying then the founding fathers were not unpacked?
Well, the founding fathers were for choosing to unpack something. Actually, let me explain it correctly. It was already unpacked when they got here into America, because in North America, as they say, chief sitting bull. Okay, they were the bison, meaning by sun, the sun god. Look at the red bull sign. It's two bulls and the sun's in the background. See, I'm not telling you no bullshit here. Now,
okay, got it. So all we gotta do is look for the word bull or cow or something in a sentence, and then we can construct a whole world scenario and world view.
You can do that with anything, but see how it works with languages is they call it alphabet, meaning only A and B. They didn't tell you alpha, zeta, meaning A to Z. So the only things that are important in this language is A and B. Now, if you look in all languages right now, especially that are being used, Arabic, Hebrew, A means ox. This Kabbalah, the aleph of the first letter means ox. In Arabic, alif means ox. Bet or ba in Arabic means the same thing. It means either female or male. At the beginning, it's either male or female. And this pretty governs how all the society viewpoint is. And so notice how the God in the Bible, because remember, like there are adversaries here, the God in the Bible says, let us go down and confuse them.
Okay, well, who is the us there?
Okay, now that us, obviously now you're realizing it's not a monotheism, or mono is an anagram for the moon. There are more beings here in the retinue with this God of the Old Testament, and who those are known as is the archangels. The one that when God, quote unquote, says do something, of course it doesn't just go poof. Something's responsible for carrying it out. So, you know, this is what we're dealing with is in the Bible, they're trying to convince you that there's only one God there. Actually, there's three. There's, first in the Old Testament, the two bull gods dueling it out. One God says, I'm not the author of confusion. The other God says, let us go down and confuse them. One God says, no good fruit can come from an evil tree. The other God says, good and evil, I do all of these things. One God says, curses anyone who hangeth upon a tree. The other God says, let's crucify Jesus. You see what I mean? So obviously people are confused because they think that there's just one person in there. But what did they tell everyone? There's three.
Well, now I would say that those in that religion there wouldn't consider themselves confused, and they've made peace with those apparent conflicting statements. Could it possibly be they have a deeper understanding of the Bible than you do? Could it be they have a deeper understanding of the Bible than you do?
I mean, it's highly possible that they may have a deeper understanding of anything if they study long enough. But in reality, I mean, I've read it 3 times, front and back, even Numbers. So that's normally the book that everyone stops at because it's just...
But you refer to it basically as an evil book anyway, so why are you reading it? You referred to it earlier as an evil book, so why are you reading it?
What is it about? Evil is ignorance. So what happens is that if you don't know something, then it becomes evil. So if someone is persuaded, if I see a whole world that is, you know, seems to be controlled by something, the first thing I need to do is come to terms with myself that I need to figure out what the hell is in there.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. How many bull gods are running around in the Quran?
Well, Allah, if they would do their research, was the being that was confined to Mars on the Terra Papers that was the bull god. It already says, because it's an A, again, is Aleph. It starts with A. That means it starts with the bull. And this was a vibration. It was the name for the moon. Because the moon was known to cause pleasure. Because you have to have pleasure in order to fertilize and reproduce. And this is why people feel their hormones more, or Horus.
Wait a minute. Why do you have to have pleasure to do that?
Because that's the whole gratification of the act in itself. There has to be some level of pleasure.
Wait a minute. Why does there have to be?
Now you're asking me about the framework itself. Like, why does there have to be pleasure? Now, okay, look at the pentagram. What happens is it's like combustion, fire versus water versus fire, then versus wood versus water. So there becomes continuous conflict in order to keep the wheel turning. So because time is a wheel, like I said, 72 times 5, 360 degrees, a perfect circle.
I'm not sure how that answers the question, though.
I did answer the question.
Why does there have to be pleasure in the mating process?
Because that's the system. The pleasure has.
Who made it that way?
Right. I'm not answering the question directly. What the pleasure does is it opens up the portal. It makes the light of the two individuals that are actually engaging in that shine bright enough so that the being that is attempting to incarnate can speed to that light and travel down that tube fast enough before it closes. And that is what's known as the race. Like when they say the human race, what is that race? That race is when from the moment that the male puts out.
Do animals have pleasure in doing the nasty too?
I would assume so.
I mean, can't say I've ever, so you see orangutans or maybe horses or whatever. I never see them like, smiling or anything.
I thought that was the seventh commandment. That's what you said in the beginning of the show. Thou shalt not observe other animals.
Oh, you got me. You were watching the show, okay, and you remembered. But I've never, it seemed like that's a exclusively human thing.
Well, again, we would look at it, okay, so of course now, that's what I was saying, you got to install the micro macro zoom. Now, we see it as, okay, oh my goodness, there's some man out there having sex with the person or animal in the farm. Now, underneath the microscope, the same thing is going on. So this is why the constellation Orion is positioned right by the constellation of Taurus, because the Ma or the matrix or the womb was seen as this gigantic womb. Okay. So again, people, the most gigantic womb that they could think of was a cow's womb.
But it seems like heterosexuals use the womb and the others use the netherworld. All right, here's a question from the live chat. It says, you obviously have a deep spiritual understanding, and for many, some of your information is not really being able to be digested, and maybe in this format, maybe it takes longer explanations for each topic or sentence. But it says, what then does the average person have a chance of becoming a deeper spiritual person that's walking around in these sort of high knowledge realms that you sort of demonstrate there? Does the average person have this, or do they have to? Because you refer to yourself as being a very intelligent person. So does that mean that a person who's lower on the IQ scale cannot be a superhumanized spiritual being?
Not at all. They're in the crucible, meaning that this planet itself as a sphere is kind of continuously put pressure on the being until it produces from them the best. That's what the whole secret of this whole crucifixion is about. A crucifixion is basically to be put in a crucible or a situation that causes so much pressure that it produces a diamond. Notice carbon is what you find a diamond inside of. So that's 666, right? So side of humanity, a diamond, or what they call and that's their soul field, basically. So when you put pressure on that soul field, no matter what kind of body you're in, eventually through an incarnation, possibly this one, the person will come into the full realization. You see what I mean? They would be put under enough pressure to where, they do anything unless they feel like they have to. Well, you can simulate that for yourself and go all the way into a higher state of consciousness, or you can wait for the dimension to turn into that so that the same thing happens anyway.
Alrighty, let's see what else we have here. Is the serpent the most important symbol?
All of the symbols are the most important. The serpent has this particular symbolism within the signs of the zodiac, etc. Yeah. And I just to have the whole serpent.
When we see symbols like AOL or any number of symbols, Shell or whatever, major companies, Monsanto, and they have symbols. At their higher realms, are they engaged in black magic or conjuring, or are they trying to tap into the darker side of different things? You're obviously you're one. It seems that want to sort of elevate humanity to the higher spiritual realms. But do corporations as a whole, maybe even governments as a group, then with them, are they trying to bring the humans back the other way?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
What's their most potent weapon? What is their most, the number one way that they choose and actually succeed at doing that?
The language. It's the control point.
Give me an example of the language that's been used.
Yourself in this language. You don't feel yourself. You say, hey, you think in your mind, man, I'm not trying to go there today. That's like, now you're using a language to talk to yourself, when before it was like just a thought. So we're one level down. So the first thing is that now you got to understand the language, and that's why they work so heavily, Daniel, with Kabbalah thing, because all it is the language and the power that comes from each word.
Yeah. Alrighty. If a person has been messed with that way, how can they undo the damage?
Programming. We have a group that's called the deprogramming division. Is that how the body works is that the DNA, when you hear the truth, this is what truth can do. When you hear the truth, it goes down on a cellular level, and it starts to work with the DNA so that the person gets deprogrammed.
Okay. What is truth?
Truth is all self. That's the absolute maximum. Like when everyone gets tired of separating and dividing, that's when the next level begins, because that's the difference between this level and that one. This one is all separated. There's so many things in its own little pigeonhole and canister.
So truth is when you're not separated.
Exactly.
From what?
You don't have that kind of like thing going on. You don't have to
that didn't tell me a damn thing. What are you separated from?
What are you separating from? That's not even what I just said.
Let's rewind the question. What is truth?
They sound like riddles. Like, what is truth? All is self, etc. Like what I'm telling people here is that truth, it has a strength to it. So truth is what happened, what actually happened.
I thought you said I thought you said it was separated, being separated.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is all is self. Maybe that just came out wrong on the air, but or maybe through the way it was translated. But all is self. This means that the ultimate truth here is that we are all of this. There's nothing of this. It's like, oh, it's this person doing it to me. Oh, it's the Illuminati. It's the devil. No. It's you, because you still have the ability to master over all of them through the mastery of your body, mind, and soul. So this means like if you decide to turn them off and then go inside and start working there and raising what they call raising the Jed, or basically start raising up your own inner structure, the knowledge is available. That's what the internet does. The internet has a plethora of knowledge on how to activate these centers. The gig is up for them, by the way, Daniel.
I would agree with that.
Is been released. So it's just also, here's another thing about this Kundalini and this higher vibration. It's catchy, meaning that when a person activates, they can touch another person and they activate. No matter what that person had been doing, they activate.
Based on the meaning of words, was Houdini the brother of Kundalini?
Houdini was actually Samuel Wer's son, the one who was responsible for bringing the black magic into the United States and New York with the Society of Magicians, who were the ones that were practicing the Jesuit, the dark cabal with. Except.
Very good. Yeah. All right. We have this question from the live chat. It says, all is self. Does that mean we are God?
Okay, let me explain this. Anything that has a name has been created. God is, if you go to Arabia right now and you say God, they're going to know you're talking about the American's God who's good, or in the Gothic God. Mr. Tin, the Tin Man, as they call him. See, they already know that our word for God is a specific being. Because if you go there, they don't use God, they use Ilah, right? And then you go somewhere else, you see they use a different word. So remember, each of these words are specific. This is what magic is too, and that's why they teach you how to spell. This is spells. There's curse words or curses. Everything about the language is the magic. So people are doing the magic, even Kabbalistic style, when they're speaking the English. using the Phoenician words and the Canaanite and the Sumerian words every day in their lives. And so, like I said, whether people want to accept that or not is still up to them. But the realization of that, it meant getting back control over the wheel.
So, what's your opinion of religions in general?
Control devices.
And what about those religions that have brought solace and wisdom and light, love and warmth and doing good to their fellow man? Aren't those projected out from religions? Although that some religions obviously have went too far in some issues, but in general, don't billions of people over the centuries have gathered their strength from religions?
The thing about spirituality is it's something that you can't play with. And if you go back to the God, you have to go back to who's, like, whatever operation they're running this cycle or last cycle, doesn't matter. I need to go to the control point, like who is controlling it. And overall, because most of these religions, especially the Abrahamic traditions, come from one God, no.
When America ships millions of tons of food to Africa and gives money away around the world for good projects, basically you go through American history and it comes back to the goodness that was instilled in the basic American soul from the biblical text that was brought over here by the earliest settlers. And that do-good desire has still remained with America, as many people consider America good. And I'm sure, I don't want to talk about, the negative parts, because we do that pretty much anyway. But based on that, though, without that, America could have ended up to be a Nazi nation, and we would not have, we would be running to the rescue of every tsunami victim out there or hurricane victim in other countries, would we not?
America has turned already into a Nazi nation. Let's get that clear. And the reality with this whole thing is that but it's time.
It is. But I was talking about historically, the goodness that America projected around the world basically is the entrenched biblical text that was taken to heart from the earliest days of this country. Isn't that right?
Let's talk about the mystic order of the shrine. Let's talk about who bought this Bible.
I'm talking about America's goodness here, and I'm just saying, can't you somewhere in your diatribe there allow for the fact that America is great because it's good and has been good? Now, I'm not saying, I talk about the evils of American government all the time, but intrinsically, the projection of the good part of this country, it came from the Judeo-Christian ethic that was instilled and brought over on the Nina Pinta and the Santa Maria.
That's not where it came from. The good sides with the people because it's in their core, but
no, basically such as a term like "thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." That and of course America's had their evil days and days, not centuries, but days. But I'm talking about the goodness projected. I'm trying to allow, even from my standpoint, allow that there has been some goodness, and it doesn't sound like you want to give them any room for that.
I said, because in order for anything to exist, there has to be good. Evil is an illusion. Negativity is an illusion. So just by America being there, it says that there's something very positive coming from it. America is a harmonic. It is the West. It is really, that's why they call it Kali or California. It is what teaches the world the dance of death. Like, I mean, come on, there's a whole nother thing going on. That's America, which means Amaraka, meaning the immortal serpent. Because even New York and all these places were all indigenous Indian grounds where heavy rituals had already been done.
They don't call America Cali. Cali calls Cali Cali. It is a state of 50.
Where the name comes from. But
if you're Obama, it's a state of 49.
States that have the same kind of resonation because the forefathers knew about this information. They were just trying to guise it under, once again, what I'm sure someone on your show has come and talked about, which was the God that stepped up and said he is the only God. Why? Because there's more than one God. So right off the bat, you're dealing with a liar. So this is what happens when a group of the people are basically being persuaded by a liar, while another group of people are being persuaded or guided by the land.
Is it possible that a liar can do good?
When you're on U.S. soil, you're already tapped into the Kundalini and the forces that are running through that soil. That is our mother still. Yes. And so, we'll stick into it thick and thin. That's, to me, what it means to be a real patriot, is to hold up the original idea and not allow these other foreign forces, as they call them, to come and desecrate our principles. Like, I on the military base, my family is all Marine Corps. And so I've seen both sides of this, and I've seen those who go out under the knowledge that they're going to protect what they have at home. And I know in their heart that's what they intend to do. All I said also is that the wise amongst us were still the ones that let us know about the actions that we were making and what kind of trouble they were getting us into. Like, you see how people are Obama, like you talk about a lot. You see now the other troubles they've gotten into because of linking up with Mavis. It doesn't mean that these people are bad people, but what happens when they make decisions in their darkness, which is evil and ignorance, and then they don't understand the ramifications of that and what it does to other people. So instead of occupy that, and standing down on Wall Street and trying to fight a bull god, fully in chakra region, like all of the rest of the stars and actors, they have a magnetic attraction. Instead of fight them on Occupy Wall Street, we're erecting people, real superhumans that can actually really do something about this situation rather than blog about it, talk on the radio, and then allow us all to be consumed by the negativity of some weird realization that this God is the only one and that we have no position here on this planet.
How many gods how many gods are there in the universe?
And like, I think it's really countless, because remember, humans are gods.
So are you saying that it's more like the Greek mythology, when everybody had a god for every reason?
Exactly. And but the reasons, now listen, the reasons narrow down to the zodiac now though. Like, each zodiac contains a particular kind of trait, and that's why when the human is born, a star appears in the sky first.
Okay, well, my zodiac is Gemini. Does that mean I have a clone somewhere? I have a twin somewhere?
What Gemini means is that, okay, now let's get in now to who the symbol of the God of the Bible is under the Gemini, or the Janus, because there's two faces, and this is also the actual plight of entire humanity, is that we have these two sides to us, and they call that duality. And now the entire book at times is constructed based on the conflicts that are going on within this mind, meaning that when you actually have problems with yourself and you're going to war with yourself, and that's why I said, because you come to the final maxim that all is self, even if you don't like a person, you're not talking to that person or whatever, in theory what you're saying is you don't like yourself and you're not talking to yourself.
Well, let me ask you something. Where did all these gods come from?
Man, I think a really interesting question. What I say is that, first of all, at least this group of beings that are here now came forward from, and this is why they also use the symbol of the bulls. It's not all negative with the bull horns. They came forth from these horns like a U, and that's why you see the horns on the Egyptian god, and then there's a sun in the middle. They're saying that basically out of Taurus, the constellation, there's another group of planets known as the Seven Sisters of the Pleiades. And that these were the matrices. So they're basically you notice how it sounds like mistresses and matrices.
Am I getting close to the answer? Are you getting close to the answer here?
Yeah, I'm saying that where this particular group of humanity came from was through that constellation. So through the explosion of stars, quasars, and the rest of whatever is out there on the ethereal planes, it reflects back down into us. Like, it continues to generate more and more beings. There's no limitations with them.
Okay, so this particular group of gods
the kind of notice, even though we have problems with the Illuminati, we're having problems, the bull gods, the lords, the Jesuses, and all these different individuals. We're having all these situations. Is the universe really having a problem? The universe has seemed to figure out a way to use all of us. So when you realize, again, all is self, you become the universe. So what happens is no longer are you a chronos or a piece in a clock, a chakra. No longer are you any of that. That's what this whole thing is really about, is that you have to understand alchemy within yourself. Alchemy is turning dirt into gold. This means that you can take anything. They can bring the worst to you, Daniel. And you'll be like, tomorrow. I'll show you what I'll do.
So which one of these gods created planet Earth?
It appears to me from the information that has been produced that Earth was like a wedding. How can I... Let me see. This is information that really, when you say it, you have to say it right one time. Like, I don't want to put people in the wrong direction about what created Earth. And What I can say is that notice how when you go and try to find Earth's chakra, it doesn't exist. This is started when I was stumbling through all these ancient papers and stuff. This was started ringing a bell to me. And Earth is an anagram for the word heart. So I went into an assumption that Earth was the heart chakra for a long time until I figured out that Venus is actually listed as the heart chakra, not Earth. So you find out that Earth doesn't really have a chakra. So all of these people here that exist on this planet, the 6 billion, whatever, but then we have these insects holding frequency. We have these birds holding frequency. We have these trees holding frequency. And each of these things are holding a frequency that's actually allowing our entire reality to exist. What if Earth was indeed a mind?
You said in the first hour, James, that you believe there are entities in the middle of the Earth. So do you believe the Earth is hollow?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I believe that the Earth has a magnetic iron core to it, and that's known as the central sun, also known as at times the black sun. And that the individuals who gravitated to that is because they know that in a magnetic field, you live a lot longer. Like if you put yourself inside of a magnetic field, that's why your body heals up fast and everything. It's almost like spontaneous regeneration, depending on the calibration of the magnets. And it's because when you put your chakra center into a magnetic field, those wheels can turn a lot easier because they don't have to deal with gravity. And that's what they found out with Joe Rogan in the DMT. He was using the flotation tank, which has got salt, which basically makes you like zero gravity, and it was an immediate release from the body.
Exactly.
Use it, it's no immediate release unless you understand the proper breathing techniques.
Okay, now what does breathing techniques, how does that get us? Is that part of the unpacking process?
For sure, because everything is breath. That's what this also boils down to. Of course, the original, I'm not even saying that the original creators of this entire system were negative. So let's get straight also. It appears to me that they gave everyone everything for free, and then we started charging each other for it. That looks like exactly what happened. But the main is still free for now, which is, and if you understand how to breathe into your lower part of your body, which is called whole body breathing, oh man. That was the beginning of my interest in meditation. Before I was like, man, I'm not going to sit anywhere. It sounds like another part of the program to me. And people, if they read the Code of the Matrix, they'll find the dueler of the galaxy, because that's the state that I was in. I was going at everything and pulling out the situation. Now, what I'm seeing is that, man, I'm giving away all of my power. Like, time I keep imagining that these people and these beings and these creatures are not me, then I got something outside of me that I'm setting up as a very clever opponent. And the more smarter I get, the more clever this opponent becomes, because it's actually existing on my own energy.
Got it. Okay, all right, here's a question for you out of the Fast Blast. Says, can you give your opinion on reptilians profiling human beings?
Okay, the reptilian saga is about a particular time on our planet where, as you see in Angkor Wat, which is a temple that is exactly lined up to the constellation Orion, the beings from Orion descended, which means first they look like birds, and then came down, they look like snakes. That's why it says in the ancient books that when they stayed on Earth for a certain period, they became grotesque. They didn't look as beautiful as they did before. Now, if you remember, there was an entire scenario with these huge reptilians on our planet that were massive.
Right.
Where did they come from? They came because they were slammed from the constellation of Orion, from the things that they had actually done. And in their descent, they took all the way on material bodies. When they finally hit the Earth, they went through all of these portals or wombs, which ended up allowing them to be into this configuration of a reptilian. This is the beginning of a sector of our experience, which was known as Lemurian, and that's why you see the Naga, you see in China that they have the dragon, because this was, in essence, the beginning, because as I told you before, the groundwork or the foundation of your feet correspond to snakes. So the snakes is because the snakes are basically the lowest on the earth. They crawl upon the dust. So, but to these poles also, because people need to understand that there's a positive side and negative side to all of this. But with the snake, being on the ground gives it grounding electricity, as they call it, the eel or L. It gives it grounding and a knowledge about stability. While the bird doesn't stay on the ground long. Notice if you see a bird, it'll go on the ground for a minute and then it's back in the air because it doesn't have ground. So what this means is from our energy levels, that's why these animals were here, is because when we understood the elemental energies within the animals, then we were able to kind of calculate into how we're behaving in proper adjustments.
Do animals know what we're thinking?
It depends on the animals. Some animals are closer to their next, as they say, the next incarnation, or the actual soul that is being developed within those animals, processing into this human body, or the lowest levels of the human body first. Because remember, there's people on the earth.
They're going to the lower parts, the netherworld too?
They'll go more as what we call indigenous. This will be their first climb out of primordial. And you still see those kind of people on Earth. Remember, Earth is not set up where each sector of Earth, each part of our Earth time period breeds a different kind of being. No, all kind of beings are on the planet at the same time. You haven't been there yet. Like if you go deep into the Amazon or deep into Colombia, you'll see a man who's never seen you or your camera or iPhone. So these are like basically the smaller constellations or the smaller zodiac signs of development that are yet to make it to the end of this, which is the West. That's why I'll say again, I'm not anti-American at all. The West teaches the last and final lesson. Many of the ones that were in the East and learned all of that masterful knowledge reincarnated into the West for their final lesson. That was what the knowledge said. Like those who experienced the East would later on have to experience the West. And that's why in their writings they say often Brahm, who to them is the chief. This is our Santa Claus. Brahm, in his next incarnation, meaning after he achieves the state of Brahm, or one achieves the state of Brahm, their next incarnation will be into the Western world.
All right, we have this question from the Fast Blast from Philip in Georgia. He wants to know, can you explain the Garden of Eden and the original sin?
The Garden of Eden?
Yes.
Okay. I call it the Garden of Eden, meaning that, look, the words are exactly the same. What's happening in the Garden of Eden is the definite suggestions of, one, be fruitful and multiply. To them, again, God is fertility. God is nature. So, according to the Bible, because remember the papacy put the Bible together because they're pro-death. When they say it was an original sin, the original sin was sex, or six, or the serpent. See, so what happens is that serpent means 6 and 5. Of course, pent means 5, the pentagram. So this is also the heavy relationship between the number 6 and 5, and also what we get all the time, 11, 11, 11, and all this. It's basically, if you saw it as a sigil, you would see a hexagram and then a pentagram inside of it. That's one diagram of the human body and what state it can be brought into. So, you know, hopefully, again, that this stuff is, there's a lot with geometry, because the first thing that the ancients that showed up on the planet determined is that everything they built came from this planet. They didn't have much off-world resources. They built everything from here. The study of geometry, which means you need to understand the trees, you need to understand the metals, you know, all of that. And then you were going to come into the higher knowledge anyway, because the same process was taking place within your body. So this, by Tubal-Cain, who's known as Smith, this is why in the movie The Matrix, Smith is known as Tubal-Cain, or 007, which is why the Queen jumps off the plane with 007. That's John D. Tubal-Cain himself, meaning the one who brought the spirit of Tubal-Cain back to the dimension. So Tubal-Cain taught them how to shape and fashion the swords. What they built was a giant statue that looked like an ox or a cow, and it had furnaces in it. And they would put their metals in there and learn how to basically make the sword, the plow, and all the rest of the arrow, and all the rest of the tools that later on became the ones that domesticated the planet. So do you see how when humans really also pull back off the planet, they'll see how they were just as involved because they're in human bodies? If you were in an animal body, then you may be blameless. But because you're in a human body, it definitely means that your ancestor, great, 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 great grandfather, great, great, great grandmother, etc., were already working what is now what they call the masonry.
Well, let me ask you something. Is a werewolf a combination of animal chakra and a human chakra?
Actually, what the werewolf is the werewolf is when now there's certain individuals that the Kundalini energy rises on the full moon for them. This is why some people are a little bit more horny. Notice the word has horn on it. A little bit more horny during the full moon and then the fish spawn and all this stuff. So
oh boy.
If has this Kundalini, which also responds to the moon's fertility component, it may well up in them so much that if they don't know what to do with it, they become the wolf. So if you saw it as the netter, you would see it as a wolf face in a man's body. They call that Anubis.
Right.
Eat. This is why dogs, their symbol, knows how we can learn a lesson from all the animals. The dog goes eat and then he's crazy. Like he's trying to get out the yard and you can't control him. They say this is the symbol of the root chakra in itself and the gateway to the underworld. And this is what they meant by the symbol. You see what I mean? You're in heat, and when you're
if you say you're gonna the term you're gonna take the bull by the horns, is that like a gay term or something?
I'm not sure deeply what on the streets it means, but taking the bull by its horns, or if you see the cult of Mithras. Now, okay, let's get into how this starts to get a little twisted up, is because now you have groups of individuals, these organizations that are pro-death. So they see that if they stop mating with women, they produce. So these are individuals who their cycle, they've been going around the cycle too long, they're ready to get off the planet. They'll do anything to get off the planet. So they go to an organization, and the organization, such as the papacy, tells them, or the penis, as it's the phallic symbol for, they tell them, you eliminate the sin, which is the moon, with woman, which is fertility, then you can get off.
You can get off. Wow.
See? And that's why they convince so many people, because of course these are people who are not having a good time here.
Right.
And this is why there becomes more people that are having such a hard time being here. They become more susceptible to these ideas of the destruction of the world. Like in the end of the Bible, once again, it's the destruction of this world and then the opening of a new world that is only a mile wide. They talk about how the New Jerusalem, the measurements is only a mile wide. How many people can we fit in a mile? So everyone is like, oh, yes. This is nothing but a Zionist propaganda once again. Zion on means it's the god of Heliopolis.
What's the Zionist agenda?
Zion is the word Zion. Kabbalistically, if they take you through the first level, they'll say it means projection. I guess the person understands it's their projection. Now, of course, they used it as a symbol for the Olympics, so it's very important. Psi is the tool with the 3 prongs on it, the same thing the devil holds. It's also, in the Greek term, psi, you'll see that same symbol. Then you see Neptune also with this thing in his hand. And I told you they're fish gods, they're fisher kings. So what Scion means is the power of Neptune coming through the moon. This is how they use the planets, i.e. their chakras, to evoke certain kinds of energy that reflect onto humanity.
The type of knowledge that you've been talking about tonight, is there any way that could be utilized to, say, perpetuate the dark side? Or is what basically your information, it is all from the light?
I think any information, like notice how if you take steel, you can form and fashion it into a plow and till the ground and actually create more fruit for everyone to eat. Or you can take it and turn it into a sword and slam it through your brother. So what I started realizing is that knowledge itself is passive. What they keep getting us to do is we choose what we're going to do with it. You see what it means? So the knowledge is like elemental. That's why they call it elemental. It's like brute strength. It doesn't know what to do. It needs you to command it and tell it what to do. So if they can control you and tell you what to do with it, then you see how that really works. But they have to do it in that order, or else they have to do it themselves. They need a middle component. It's not a good idea to be connecting, and they call it associating partners with God. This means you're You're God. There's nothing outside. So if you associate one of these other beings as being higher than you or whatever, regardless of whatever their name is or whatever, just the whole concept by itself starts to mess you up.
Do you feel, have you seen any evidence in your own life that maybe you have any sort of supernatural powers at all?
For sure. It's intermittent, though. What I noticed is that...
And what can you do when those powers erupt?
It's just manifestation powers. Like, what happens is that what everyone has the ability to do is to go into their lucid sleep once you start to control your dreams and to pull things from the lucid sleep, mainly energy, pure energy, because it's not identified. And then you bring that energy into your field. And then what you'll see is your first field, because this is, of course, what has to be corrected in order for you to even be able to do this. Yeah. But the first field is your aura. Do you feel comfortable inside of you, or do you feel like you want to retreat from you? Then the next field is your room. Is your room also reflecting how you feel inside? The next thing is your house. Can you walk through your house without getting in some type of major conflict with the individual that it has to stay there with you? And then your city. And it keeps expanding from there. And each of these are spheres that we have to work on personally and perfecting, because that's our protection. And then but the beginning, of course, is what we call understanding. Once you start from the inside, it starts to reflect this way of how you are. And even that's what's going on now. Everything that you're dealing with right now is because of what is coming from the inside of you, be it positive or negative.
So if somebody gets into a car wreck, it's because they were negatively charged?
A lot of times, I notice, especially with certain stones, I learned this lesson from stones because, of course, crystals do things. There are information contained within crystals, especially meteorites. But sometimes, if you fast forward too fast, meaning that you want to get to the meaning of all this, don't want to wait on the lessons anymore. How the universe responds to that is it causes something to happen that basically makes everything that you were doing before stop. And then whole new thing to start. So a lot of times what car accidents are is the same thing that you would see happen to yourself on the as above level. You've actually impacted something. So if you go and you get the person's name that you hit, the type of and all of that, the street that you were on, you'll find exactly what constellation that you were in. That's how wired down the matrix is. To understand, it's in the words, the letters, the numbers, the hospitals. It's in that. That's the only way they can maintain control over 6 billion, 7 billion. And of course, it's fed into first an artificial database that has now reached the level of sentience. They call this AI. This was the experiments back in 1940, which blending the brain cell with a computer chip. So again, humanity is continuously accelerating other parts of humanity. Notice we're not still seeing everyone in the world. There's people who stay in castles and are never seen. So for us, we need to stop having this idea that we know who everyone is on this earth. Do we think that people that have a great deal of real spiritual power are just at BB at the mall? You know, like, how much sense does that make?
Well,
like,
well, let me ask you something. Are you saying that everything that happens in our life is already written in the stars? I mean, because you said it was spelled out in the constellations.
Yes, until a person gets out of the cycle, yes. This is also how you get out of the cycles of time. When you become nonlinear, you no longer allow the animalistic trait of yourself in the zodiac to have complete control over your destiny. Because that's what they're counting on that. And that's why if you look at the Book of Destiny, I think that's what it's called. It's a book about zodiac, and it was done by Kabbalists. It's a huge book. You can find it on Amazon. But man, every time you let someone read the book, they start crying. Because they're amazed that someone can actually write about exactly who they are, almost to like 90% closeness. But then I went one step after that. I'm not going to get caught up in the same cycle of the Wiccans and the witchcraft and the pentagram and the endless knot. I realized that that's a circle. The power of this straight line, remember, you got to use both of them, but the power of the straight line is to break cycles, to come out of it, to do a coil rather than this circle and keep repeating yourself. So you see how you can still, again, take the knowledge and be like, look, man, I'm out of this Ouroboros consuming myself. I'm fighting and arguing with myself. Different images. How cycle, like I said, or psycho and cycle is that? Yelling at yourself basically in a mirror.
James, in your organization, the Resistance, how many can speak like you?
Man, like the Resistance has not only 6,000 members, but it has over 1 million impressions. There's individuals that on their own have taken the message into their nucleus and begin to spread and create their own resistance faction. So it's countless at this point because the information is universal. Now, this show may be a crash course for a lot of people who are getting the knowledge. And again, we were just talking about the bull gods and the root chakra. That's not the only thing going on. That's not the only chakra, but it's where we should start. Like we do teach from the bottom up. Because in the bottom areas is where the deep stuff that happened, because the root chakra corresponds, just really briefly, to the age of between 5 and 7, or actually 1 and 7 years old. So it's the things that happen to you between 1 and 7, finding out Santa Claus ain't real, getting left at the mall, and that ultimate feeling of you may be doomed since everyone around you is strangers and you should not talk to them.
Right. Catholic priest gets a hold of you.
Go ahead.
A Catholic priest gets a hold of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's big stories going on. Like, I mean, even in Liberia, it's even worse than that. So that's when the person basically becomes sealed. That's why they talk about the Kundalini is trapped in the base of the spine, also known as hell. So this would be like a person trapped in hell. So what they're saying is that the energy of the person, their true potential, is trapped in this root chakra because there's things that were really deep that happened to them when they were younger, and they forgot about it, basically. They had to forget about it, and they built a foundation on top of it. Because remember, the root chakra is also your foundation. That's the positive and negative side to it. So if you have a damaged root chakra, you don't have much money, you don't have much current.
So, but you can rebuild your chakra if you've damaged it.
You can. And that's what this whole thing is really about, is the knowledge had been delivered. This is the other thing. Now we're looking at a situation that is forcefully being caused because the knowledge of how to end all of this was made available at least 20,000 years ago. It was written about. Now, here's the statement of the original Buddha. I'm just going to tell you what he said. He said once he had achieved all this high level of enlightenment, etc., what he saw was that the gods would later on become subject to physicality, and to not put much trust in the God because there was nothing that they could do to stop what the universe is doing. However, find joy, because what I have discovered is that in this earth, though, there is enough things here to get you to enlightenment. And that's what I said. That's the end. Now, the gods that later on suffered physicality was us.
But you're describing a plan that was activated or premeditated. Who made that design? Who implemented it? Who scheduled it to happen?
Us.
Now you're going to. That sounds circular there.
Us. It's everyone was involved in the decision.
You're saying it couldn't be stopped. The destiny of that couldn't be stopped. You're saying, but you're saying then that the people that it happened to were the people that made the plan.
Exactly. So we're talking about levels of this. So the first level is that you get put into the cycle. You know you need to go in. It's like basically what they're saying is that you are agreeing at this point to go into your next stage of who you are going to be, which is the same thing you would have to do now. Like right now, like if you understand about the chakras, the tones, the vibrations, you go into the next level of humanity in the spiritual being. That's it. No one can stop that.
Do you believe that the Big Bang happened? Do you believe that there was a Big Bang and the universes were created from that? Again, if we're talking about frequency and then how frequency starts, if there was no, we're not talking about frequency. We're talking about whether or not you believe that the worlds and the universes came from a single point, otherwise known in the scientific world as the Big Bang theory.
I understand that the world and the universe does come from a single point. As far as the rest of what they tag along onto the Big Bang Theory, which ends up becoming almost atheism, I do not subscribe to. So I know the rest of the agenda from Freud and Jung and what they were attempting to accomplish with Ubermensch, which is the journey for superhuman, which does not mean the same as it comes out to in the atomic mind of the Westerner. Ubermensch to them means to over, and it also means to over without God, and it also means to retreat to a place or cold like Alaska or Antarctica, and to do that because the burden of society is more to bear than you being out in those elemental conditions. Now you see the difference in the mind of the Nazi versus the American mind. The American mind is trying to go in the hot sun all the time and on the beach with trees. These individuals go out into the Himalayas because they're fed up of Earth. They're to get into the next. And again, some of them, again, for this whole conversation, the generative principle, the extreme is when sex sells. Meaning now, out in the reality, everything has to be introduced with some boobs and some booty and some of that for a person to even look at it, right? So now, the generative principle,
well, you know, your audio there is cutting out a little bit, and it only came back. You were saying about a minute's worth there, and all that came out of what you said was people were looking for booty. So, some kind of connection problem. Are you on an internet connection?
Yeah, I'm on an internet connection.
Well, it was fading out there. Okay, so what we got then? We want, or your organization is basically there to help people to unpack, to get to find out what their true destinies. But what happens when somebody doesn't need to come back anymore? Where are they at? Where do they go?
It's another geometry. It's another system that has not even been introduced here. Anything that.
Then how do you if it's not been introduced, how do you know it's there? Isn't it like the CERN collider where they're saying we almost thought we might have saw something, and so therefore God doesn't exist? That's, you know, I mean, you gotta have a little bit more evidence than that, don't you?
I mean, maybe another person needs more evidence of it, but remember, it's the soul is often solo, so hopefully a person will figure out for themselves and to be able to create something that's solid enough. Like, we can't just say what everything else doesn't exist. We floating this there. We have the ability to create where we like what the chakra starts showing you is get the real schematic and the visualization behind actually creating.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, James, listen, we're going to have to come to the end of the broadcast here. You need final thoughts or words about your website or anything else? You go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll just tell everyone if you want to get some of the information, we do groups daily with different topics. They can log in at www.resistance2010.com, astroquest.com. That's easier. And honestly, this information, I want to first say thank you for hosting the message. As I always say, you unpacked it for these people. That was the shipment. The information got through, and you unpacked it to them. What a person chooses to do with the jewels and where they, invest it, it's going to be pretty much up to them. So I just want to say wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and just to let everyone know, man, humanity's potential. There are individuals that are already tapping into humanity's potential, and that's why this is still going. Meaning that's why there is still life. We're able to connect. We're talking to each other. We get something to eat. Some of us. We have to expand that more. And that's all I really have to say.
Awesome. All right, James, thanks so much for coming on the Edge broadcast tonight.
Oh, man, thank you, Daniel.
All righty. Stay safe. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, that was James Bomar III talking about the resistance. And we had some audio resistance there. It looks like to me in the end there, we would have kept going, but it wasn't very pleasant when it was cutting out like that. So it wasn't from our end. So anyway, next week we've got, who do we got? Lyle Blackburn. He's going to be talking about cryptozoology. And we had some talk of animals tonight, and animal-human activities of various kinds, shall we say. Different chakras going around. I saw a lot of people appreciate some of my questions. I was as tactful as I could be, many other things. If you'd like to see or hear more about what James is talking about, he does have a series of YouTube videos out there. In fact, that's how he was addressed to the show, recommended to the show, where somebody sent us a YouTube video, and we saw him there on a chalkboard. So it was figured, hey, we're going to get him on the program and see what we can learn. And somebody in the live chat said, you learn negative and positive stuff in every interview. And of course, that's what I say. You get truth and you get other things, but you have to have it all together, or you won't get any of it. And that's what we strive to do every week. And that's why we say discovering the truth together. Daniel out for the Edge. Thank you, everybody, for watching.